Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. And we have another of our guests, executives of junior mining companies to come on. Today, it's Christina McCarthy from Paycore Minerals. And we got a lot to talk about because they just had a really good news release out. Christina, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Allan.
You know, Christina, the more I look at this Eureka area and I learn more about it, I just get more and more excited about the prospect. I mean, the grades that you're seeing with the gold, the silver, the lead, the zinc, you know, you've got you and I-80 Gold are tapping into some of the most valuable rock being found out there these days, and you guys are right beside each other looking at the same kind of a system. It's very exciting.
Yeah, it's incredible how much CRD mineralization is in Nevada, and I think it's been overlooked previously because of just the thought of it always being in Mexico or even Arizona mining, and there'd be exploration in Arizona for CRD. But it's interesting because on both sides of the border, both I-80 and Paycore were both hitting great intercepts of high grade CRD mineralization. So it's been a really interesting area, given that hasn't been drilled for several decades until the past year and a half, 2 years.
And what really stands out about that CRD, it's high grade for a CRD, the main metals, the lead, the zinc, and the silver. But then you've got this overprint of high grade gold that just has me really intrigued. And the more I learn about it, the more I learn how important those fluid pathways are in the faulting, the faulting that goes through both your and I-80 Gold's ground.
Yeah, it's largely because of the Carlin mineralization that's nearby. Many people knew about the teach-in that I-80 had yesterday, and Tyler Hill, their exploration manager, noted on there that the Ruby Hill mine that we have on the Paycore property, if it were in production today, it would have been the highest grade gold mine in Nevada. And it's interesting because there's just so many fluids around in this area. And also you have the Archimedes pit, which is on the I-80 property. And so you have CRDs, which are typically, so carbonate replacement deposits, always base metals, but because there's so much gold fluid around, there's a secondary event or an overprint of gold mineralization on these CRDs, giving it a sort of a boost, I guess you could say, as in terms of the grade. And any processing scenario and any processing scenario, it's going to be just an extra credit. I call the meat and potatoes, the lead, zinc, and the base metal polymetallics, and then the gravy is sort of the gold that we've been getting, which is pretty nice.
Meat and potatoes look pretty darn good, and then you throw on the overprint of the gold, and the nice thing is that they seem to be following that same fluid pathways along those faults based on what I heard in the I-80 teach-in the other day. It's awfully nice when they're promoting your company, Christina.
Yeah, they did certainly mention us quite a bit. And again, that's because the structures continue past property boundaries. And we have identified several structures that run through both of our projects, the many of which we're both drilling on right now. So it's certainly, obviously in the sense that there's some type of synergies there. It's interesting because of the high grade nature of these and how it's just been overlooked previously in Nevada for CRD. So I watch what they're doing and they watch what we're doing
very closely. And well, it's so associated. There's so much closeology there in the mineralization. And another interesting thing is that sort of right in between you, Hilltop, I-80, and your project, there's a big geophysical anomaly there.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's sitting right on a couple of faults. And if the juices are flowing to the north, it looks like the juices are flowing to the south as well, which means you've got a lot of room there between your zone and the claim boundary.
Yeah, there's a lot to be drilled right now. We certainly have, I mean, now that we have 20 million cash in the bank, it certainly makes a big difference for where we, what the next year looks like for us. And so we're going to aggressively drill these structures and these targets. And the upcoming drill program, they got about 4 feet of snow out there a few weeks back, but it looks like the drill's mobilizing in a few days here. So we're going to start drilling within a few days. So I'm pretty excited to fawn, and we'll bring on 2 drills initially. And then I think that we're going to try to also get a directional drill just to, again, save on costs so that we can hit, given those targets are pretty deep.
Now, another thing that popped out of me on your latest news release is I looked at your plan map, and I knew that you guys had acquired a bunch of, or you found a bunch of new old holes that had never been assayed. Yeah. And where those are located is very exciting.
I'll bring those up.
Yeah.
So we have, we announced in the press release, we actually announced, this is all familiar to you, our presentation that we've spoken about many times. And slide 17 right here of the presentation deck demonstrates the down dip potential. The black holes are the historic holes that were previously drilled by Hecla, some by Homestake, and then also the green is Paycore drilling. And so you can see the mineralization here, the footprint, this right here being the entirety of what is the existing resource. That's that 3.5 million tons of 200 grams silver, over 5 grams gold, and nearly 13% lead zinc. That sits right in here. So we believe that there is a potential to test this down dip extension and follow up on the historic drilling that was done by Hecla and potentially link up some of these holes. And so the farthest hole that was drilled was 729. And we mentioned this in our last press release because when we found these 20 holes of core in this building that have been sitting there for 60 years, one of the first holes that we pulled from that pile was 729. And that's because we realized that that was the only hole in the entire database that clipped the Jackson Fault. So we relogged the hole. We looked at the database and what the Hecla Mining had previously assayed, and we were able to confirm that, in fact, in that historical hole, there was high-grade mineralization. So we have since logged 729 and sent some of the core to the lab for assaying to check and validate their results, but also to test some of the broader zones that they had never tested. We tested some alteration zones and sent those to the lab as well, because they're going to give a good indication of what's going on here. So we should see those results back here in a couple of weeks. And
for the non-geo out there, the alteration is important, because when the fluids that bring these metals up to the surface, when they interact with the country rock, they chemically alter that rock. So when you're in the alteration, you know that you're getting close to, or you should have mineralization somewhere around there. That was a great map. This one is, so you just showed a cross section, but this is
that was yeah, showing all of the historical core in what is basically a cross section. But again, it was not a true cross section because we had to incorporate all of the historic holes. But I wanted to show you a plan map now. So, looking from, down on the project, I-80 is up here, Paycore is down here. You can see the black is our property boundary. The red here is where the FAD deposit is. And all of these labels here are historic holes that we found. So all of these holes hit high grade mineralization, just scattered all over the property. So, some you can see down here in a cluster on the Lawton Fault, which that will test, but specifically the Jackson Fault, which we talk about right here. And there's this in 729. So here's the fault. And when you hit it, we hit it at depth because everything sort of dips this way from what we know so far. But and we're still trying to understand more about, you know, all of these faults, because a large number of these faults have never been tested or have hardly been tested, and it's because they've been under cover and they were under a lot of alluvial cover. So because of that,
That's
you know,
that
the
light
predecessors have not
greenish,
drilled it.
that's that light greenish rock or whatever color that
Yeah,
is.
that's right. Here's the legend here that shows you, but specifically 729 right here, that's the one hole in the entire database that hit the Jackson fault, and it hit high grade mineralization. And again, this was previously drilled by Hecla, you know, several decades ago. So that's the hole that we're looking to target and test up. So again, right here, you can see how far away it is from the FAD deposit. So, but all of these holes are exciting because they all hit, you can see that there's multiple horizons of intercepts in here, some of which hit 13, 14% lead zinc. So we're going to test we're going to pull all of these holes in the historic data. There's again about 20 of them. We announced that in the press release that we announced earlier in the week, and we'll test these, and we may potentially cut and assay part of the core that was never sampled, and largely because, you know, we don't know what they didn't know back then.
Right.
Largely, we do know that they did not know about Carlin, because Carlin hadn't been discovered until the 70s, right? And so, and these holes were mostly drilled in the 50s and 60s. So there could be a lot of potential here in terms of, you know, Carlin or additional CRD that we might find in our
You
next
know, I
exploration.
think one thing that you brought up there is the faults and how important they are. And do you have a map there that shows your faults and the right rock packages? Can you bring
Sure
that up?
thing.
Because I think that helps everybody understand just how important those fluid pathways are. And
Here we go.
yeah, that's that.
So I'll just show you in a few maps. So if you look from, again, Google Earth, here's the Ruby Hill faults. Here's the old workings from the Ruby Hill complex where they mined all of that high grade. You could see in the first bullet point here, 1.6 million ounces of gold at 0.9 ounces per ton and 38 million ounces of silver at 21 ounces per ton. About 80% of that was mined from Ruby Hill. And so that's, when you think about what FAD is, it's, you know, this was likely all one package, but the fault here, the Ruby Hill fault, has down dropped and displaced the FAD deposit. And this star that you see here, I've just superimposed the surface here so that you can understand where it is relative to the fault. That star sits around 700 meters or 2,400 feet. And this is the original historic resource that Hecla had defined. And again, it's important to note that when they did that, they actually defined ore reserves. So it's a high degree of confidence here. And so all of this area, that down dip extension that I told you about, all of that area is where we're going to test. And again, up here is where you, if you remember the plan map I just showed you, where 729 is, the historic hole that flips the Jackson fault, that's way out here. And so we're going to test all of that down dip extension, but, you know, more near term focus is to prove up the confidence and expand directly around the main zone. And but on your note about the rock package, now if that exact same that sort of that view, I've now flipped you right into a cross section. So that's the old workings that you saw. That's that Ruby Hill fault that I showed you on the previous slide. That star that I showed you, that's right here. That's the FAD main zone. And all of this purple is the host rock. That's an Eldorado dolomite. You need to have those limestones. Those are the favorable zones of carbonate replacement deposits. And so we have, as you can see, quite a bit of it. And we don't even know yet what's over here. We haven't, again, this is the Jackson fault. So we don't even know yet what's over here. So
this map really stands out to me for several reasons. One is on that Ruby Hill fault, you've got mineralization on both sides of the fault.
Yeah.
Then you go a little over to the right, and you've got another fault. You got another fault right beside that, and then they meet together in that same rock package.
Yeah.
Then you keep
certainly that conversion zones are very interesting.
You got that right. That's got me very intrigued. And then you go a little more and you got the Jackson Fault, and you've got mineralization on the other side of the Jackson Fault too, I think.
That's right. And then there's an, I'll just flip to I-80's teach-in from yesterday, because this is a plan map again, like I-80 here, Paycore here with FAD and the Ruby Hill. They have these faults all running through here. So it's about 1.5 kilometers from the edge of their pit to our border. And then we have about 3 kilometers to test
Holy
the
moly.
south. And so
Of
again,
those
more
same
structure.
faults, of
We
those
tested
same,
this structure.
of those same faults.
Yeah, all of the same faults that they're finding the mineralization on over here, we have the same faults trending through here. We haven't even tested this one. We haven't tested Jackson over here. We just found the one hole from the historic. Again, that's up here. And we haven't even tested this over here. So it'll be interesting to see how these faults play out.
And now you've got lots of money to go after it in a big way, Christina. That's got to make you pretty happy.
Yeah, it's been great to be able to, like, you know, even that teaching that I-80 did, you know, we learn a lot from the structures and the geophysics that they did that work for them, because some of these targets are deep, right? And so you have to, some geophysics don't work at a certain depth. And so when we watch what they're doing, it, we learn, and were they successful in the directional drilling, because the rock is going to largely be similar. And so if they're successful with their directional drilling, then it'll likely work for us. So that's when I say, you know, we watch what they do. It's largely to see what successes are they having, what are they seeing in their rock packages, and how can we learn from that as well? Because a lot of these faults are, again, I mean, the faults are similar and the rock packages are similar. But for us, you know, I think that, you know, we have the original Ruby Hill mine. And so, and again, as you know, I-80 noted yesterday, it would be it'd be largely the highest grade gold mine in Nevada if it was in production today. So we still have to test all of that area.
On a gold equivalent basis, it would be the highest grade.
Yeah.
Nevada.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see that all of that is just, and again, that was drilled that was mined in like 1800s and early 1900s. And so we've only drilled 2 holes in it. We announced there's a highlight in the press release from this week about those 2 holes, and they were phenomenal. In the first 110 to 150 meters, we found, you know, 5.3 grams per ton gold equivalent and 4.5 grams per ton gold equivalent over large intersections. Those are previously announced, so I'm just referencing those holes. But the point is, that's a huge target, 1.5 by 1.5 kilometers. There's super high grade that came in from that mine in the past, and we have yet to test that area. We've only drilled 2 holes, largely because we've been focusing on the deeper stuff.
You know, you bring up a good point there, Christine. I'm always trying to promote to my audience to do their homework. And what you just described there, you're watching I-80's teaching, they're watching what you do. And I think that investors can really learn something from that. That's how you go about understanding. You're the geo and they're the geo on the other side of your border, and you're each closely watching what each other are doing. And that's how you do your homework.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're giving my investor audience some good tools there, Christina. It's important to keep your eyes and ears open, and when there's good information out there, to go and consume that, because it tells you a lot.
Yeah, I referenced in my presentation it was a geological paper that I found that was published in the 90s by 2 PhDs at the University of Arizona, co-authored by the ex-senior geologist at Barrick. And it was that paper that really kind of led me to this area. And I thought, and because the paper identified structures that, and it's, again, it was in the 90s. So this has been sitting here dormant since the 50s, 60s, no holes drilled. So that's published in the 90s, and there was no drilling from then until now. And they're saying, oh, there's all of these structures that have yet to be tested and drilled because they're underexplored, because they're undercover. And that's why I was like, well, this has got to be a very interesting target here. And you know, I think for 20 years north of us over at I-80, they hadn't drilled there because Waterton owned it before that. And, you know, Barrick was focused on the Archimedes pit production. And there was not any, there was all these homestake holes that they found in the database that they followed up on as well. And so you just see all of this area that's, again, it was all of this geological paper that brought me to this area. And it's not even just, I-80 and Paycore, right? These structures run to the south and they continue. I mean, this is a big district. It's been mined for over 100 years, and it's not really talked about or known about for CRDs, because Nevada is known for Carlin, known for gold. And so
Right.
there's such a connect in that regard with CRDs. But
Well, it's interesting that you bring up that southern side, because those faults and structures and past mining continues from Archimedes, your project, Golden Lake right beside you. That corridor keeps going, and there is a bunch of little mines there. And now they've recently done some sampling there and hit the same kind of stuff, the same kind of CRD, the same kind of high grade gold. Then south of them, you've got Timberline. They've done the same thing, historical mining. They're not really focused on the CRDs yet, but I noticed that they did some sampling right beside your project on the eastern side, and there was past CRD mining there, and they did a lot of sampling that shows that same kind of mineralization.
yeah, just for the folks that are watching, I'll just bring up a map quickly so it makes sense what you're talking about there.
There you go.
This is where they did their sampling.
Yep.
Timberline. And so I-80, Paycore here at Golden Lake, and Timberline, and and these are largely, the sort of the area. And again, there's some other mines in here that have been, historically pretty, worked on and have production from them that were early 1900s. But this is, it's a large district, and these faults continue to the south. And so we're going to, again, focus on the FAD main zone. In the exploration update, we will allocate some of the holes over at the Jackson Fault, and the drilling will really, it's largely on success of mineralization where we focus the ratio of holes, because if we start finding some really good stuff over at Jackson, we'll do more than the initial planned holes over there. And so 20 million bucks in the bank, I think we're in a good spot to start doing all of it.
That Jackson Fault has me really intrigued, and because of, you look at I-80, and they were talking about how close the mineralization was to the faulting. And you've got indications that you've got gold on both sides of the fault, of the Jackson Fault. So I think either side of it is open for exploration.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what plays out here over the next several months. So pay close attention. We'll have the exploration from that. Again, I would say to folks that are watching this, read that exploration update. It's going to give you a good idea of what we're doing and what we've done already and where our focus will be over the next several months. We'll have 2 concurrent programs running. So I feel like we'll have lots of news flow. It'll be from the FAD main zone, the Jackson Fault, as well as the historic program, because we're going to test, open every single box, sample every foot of core in there, and see maybe what the old timers missed or what Hecla missed, that is.
Now, you're kind of going on a bit of a marketing tour. You've got the BMO conference you're going to, and then I imagine you're going back up to the PDAC.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a very busy time right now. The BMO conference starts actually largely, a lot of folks probably heading down there today and tomorrow, and then PDAX right after that. And then we're going to be putting the drills out there in a few days. So we're extremely busy right now.
Well, and it's going to be nice for you. You know a lot of people in the sector, and it's going to be nice. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to talk to you, Christina, about that. That financing you did, $18 million with no warrant attached.
Yeah, we did it good. CIBC and PI Financial were the underwriters leading the deal. It was nearly 3 times oversubscribed. And so it was really good to see that, we did it. It was really good timing that we did it. And we have a really great roster now of shareholders, and I think we're in a good position.
You're on a path to becoming one of those overnight stars that took a little while, but not very long, because you're less than a year old as a public company. And you've had tremendous success with your drilling, which led to you started at an $8 million bought deal financing. You closed it off at $18 million with no warrant attached. And now you're loaded up with cash to go and explore aggressively one of the most important exploration regions of Nevada right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess stay tuned.
Meteoric rise there, Christina. Did you have any, that took a while for that meteoric rise, eh, Christina? You've been around the business a while.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really proud of what our team has accomplished, both in the field and our management team. And we, like I said, we're barely, like you said, we're not even a year old yet in terms of when we began trading back in April 2022. And so I think that when you look at our chart, we performed pretty well. And now we're in a position, we're not the same company we were just a month ago that was, needed to finance, and that has, a lot of capital intensive holes because they're deeper, right? And so, we're not going to be raising money for quite a long time. And so I think that for folks to think, when is a good time to get in? Well, I think you'd want to be an investor before we announce drill holes, because you lose that opportunity, as with many of our peers, right?
You're
It's
still
not going to
early
be
in the Lassonde curve, the first.
well, that's the development curve, but meaning, exploration. All I'm saying is that we're cashed up, and we're not going to be financing anytime soon.
You mentioned something there that I would be remiss not to ask you about before we close off. You mentioned your team. And just to put that into perspective, in the last decade or so, one of the big successes in the junior mining space was Arizona Mining. They found a CRD in Arizona that was bought out for $2 billion Canadian. The guy that was running that company is your chairman.
That's right, Jim Gowans. And Jim Gowans spent a lot of time with Kimiko, with Barrick, with Placer Dome. He is arguably top 3 best metallurgists on the globe. Anyone you ask would say the same. He's been amazing to work with. And my CFO has been absolutely phenomenal. He was with Premier Gold previously, and he joined us after the acquisition of Equinox taking over Premier.
Yeah.
And then John Begeman, he's been amazing as well. John Begeman was with Humana. I know him back in the gold when I worked for Rob McEwen. And we just have a phenomenal team, and it's been such a great ride so far. And so I hope, over the next 12 months, we prove to do the same. And, now with some capital weight here to drill some more holes and be able to put out more of a more robust and consistent news flow for folks.
Well, with the 1-2 punch of you guys and I-80 and the potential for some others around you, I think that this year is going to be a phenomenal year for the Eureka, the immediate Eureka mining camp. I'm going to start calling it.
Yeah.
CRD Central. There we go.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a bit of a buzzword around it soon, I think, with all of the mineralization everyone's finding. So we'll see who has it.
CRD Central, that's my name for it. So I'm going to close it off. Christina, did you have any closing comment? I think you did.
I think we're good. I think just, pay attention to the news flow with, 2 programs running, as I said, the exploration program, that's new exploration holes, and then us doing the historic program, relogging all of the old data. We're in the process of digitizing everything. We found documents just a couple weeks before Christmas that were from 1907. So there's a lot of data in there that we're going to build up our own model with, and I think it's going to give us a really good focus on what to do next.
Predictability always helps in exploration.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christina. Let me close it off and we'll have a little chat at the other end.
Thanks for having me, Allan.
Okay.
It's a pleasure.
So there you go, folks. Christina runs a very young company that's done some tremendous things in an area that is quickly emerging as one of the most important exploration regions in Nevada. They've got right beside them, they've got I-80 Gold that's done tremendous work at their property. And in a way, that's kind of free work for Christina and her team because they can learn from what the other guys are doing. And that helps them direct their work. And they've got all this past drilling that now that's like free drilling that gives you a bunch of information. They've got all these old reports. And now they're loaded up with cash to go after this in an aggressive way. And it's one thing to want to go after something in an aggressive way with the money you have. In this case, they have something special that deserves to be gone after in a big way. And I don't think it's I think it's a pretty good sign that some big people out there that have cut some nice checks like what they see as well. So as always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisor before making any investment decision. And I really liked what Christina was showing investors out there. She's running one company and she's watching what everybody else around her is doing. And I think investors should do the same thing to become well-informed in the companies that they're investing in. On that note, have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.